Opening prayer. So Kunga and Zara, thank you very much for joining us tonight, and hopefully some more people will be coming in to join us, or we'll have people that will be online on YouTube that will join sometime later this week or whatever. And but we're going to proceed with our discussion. We're going to continue talking about the Dharma in terms of the jewel ornament of liberation, and get a little broad understanding of what it is that we're involved in. So we begin with our opening prayers. So tonight we'll start. So to help give everybody a flavor of the prayers in the Tibetan language, I'm going to recite one time in English, and then I'm going to recite in the Tibetan two times. So to give everybody a little more opportunity to practice um, their uh, their Tibetan language. So we start with the altruistic motivation. All mother sentient beings, especially those enemies who hate me, obstructors who harm me, and those who create obstacles on my path to liberation and omniscience. May they experience happiness, be separated from suffering, and swiftly I will establish them in the state of unsurpassed, perfect, complete, precious Buddhahood. Dagla dangwa je pe dra no pa je pe ge. Tar pa dang tam she ken pe bar du jo par je pa tam she ki so je pe. Manam kadam yam pe sem chen tam she de wa dang den. Dog now dang drel nor du la na me pa yang dag pa zog pe zhang ju rimpo she to pa ja. Dag la dang wa je pe dra no pa je pe ge. Tar pa dang tam she ken pe bar du jo par je pa tam she ki so je pe. Manam kadam yam pe sem chen tam she de wa dang den. Dog now dang drao nor du la na me pa yang dag pa zog pe shang ju rin po she to pa ja. The Action Bodhicitta Prayer. Thus, until I achieve enlightenment, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. Until death, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. From now until this time tomorrow, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. De she du sang ma ge gi ba du lu na gi sam ge wa la ko. Ma she ba du lu na gi sam ge wa la ko. Du de ring ne song te ni ma sang ta sam gi ba du lu na gi sam ge wa la ko. De she du sang ma ge gi ba du lu na gi sam ge wa la ko. Ma she ba du lu na gi sam ge wa la ko. Du de ring ne song te ni ma sang ta sam gi ba du lu na gi sam ge wa la ko. And the short refuge prayer. In the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha most excellent, I take refuge until enlightenment is reached. By the merit of generosity and other good deeds, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. Sangye chodang soki chodam la, shangju badu dagni kapsuchi, Dagi Jinsoki Pe Sonamgi Trola Penshir Sange Jupa Shod Sange Chodang Soki Chonamla Shangshub Semni Shangshub Bardu Dagni Kapsuchi Dagi Jinsoki Pe Sonamgi Trola Penshir Sange Jupa Shog. The four immeasurables. May all mother sentient beings, boundless as the sky, have happiness and the causes of happiness. May they be liberated from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they never be separated from the happiness that is free from sorrow. May they rest in equanimity, free from attachment and aversion. Manam kadamyam pesem chen tamshe dewadang dewe gurdang dempa jorchi. Dugnal dang dunal gi gudang drawar jorchi. Dugnal me pe dewa dang mi drawar jorchi. Ne ring jagdang ni dang drawe tang namla ne pa jorchi. Manam kadam yam pe sem chen tam she dewa dang dewe gurdang dempa jorchi. Dugnal dang dunal gi gudang drawa jorchi. Dugnal me pe dewa dang mi drawa jorchi. Ne ring jagdang ni dang drawe tang namla ne pa jorchi. The 100 purification syllable, the 100 syllable purification mantra of Vajrasattva. Om Vajrasattva Samaya. Help to protect my vow, to purify myself. May you remain firm with me. Grant me the complete satisfaction. Grow with me. Be loving towards me. Grant me the attainments to master the powers beyond body and nature. Show me all the deeds of body, speech, and mind. Make my mind heart good, virtuous, and auspicious. Revel in the bliss of the four joys, O Blessed One, who embodies the essence within me. Do not abandon me. Grant me the realizations of the indestructible nature. Make me one with you. Thus I signify my unity with non-duality. Ah. Om Vajrasattva Samaya Manupalaya Vajrasattva Tenopa Dristadredo Me Bhava Sutto Kayo Me Bhava Supo Kayo Me Bhava Anuraktu Me Bhava Sarasiddhi Me Prayatsa Sara Karma Sitsa Me Sitsan Shriya Kuru Hong. Ha 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 ho Bhagavan. Saratada Gata Bajra Mame Munsa Bajri Bhava Mahasamaya Satwaha. Om Vajrasattva Samaya Manupalaya Vajrasattva Tenopa Dristadredo Me Bhava Sutto Kayo Me Bhava Supo Kayo Me Bhava Anuraktu Me Bhava Sarasiddhi Me Prayatsa Sara Karma Sitsa Me Sitsan Shriya Kuru Hong. Ha 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 ho Bhagavan. Saratada Gata Bajra Mame Mansa Bajri Bhava Mahasamaya Satwaha. Om Vajrasattva Samaya Manupalaya Vajrasattva Tenopa Dristadredo Me Bhava Suto Kayo Me Bhava Supo Kayo Me Bhava Anuraktu Me Bhava Sara Siddhi Me Prayatsa Sara Karma Sitsa Me Sitsan Shriya Kuruhum Ha 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 ho Bhagavan Saratada Gata Bajra Mame Mansa Bajri Bhava Mahasamaya Sattva. Okay, thank you very much. So tonight we're going to talk more about the overview of why we are studying all of this, what we hope to get out of it, what the four thoughts that turn the mind to the Dharma is all about, why we are here. So one of the things that we talk about is the what, the why, and the how. What it is, why it is, and how it is. We can add one more thing to that for this conversation, and that is who. Who are we? What is it that we are talking about? Why are we investigating this? And how do we proceed to incorporate this investigation into our everyday lives? So it's a who, it's a what, it's a why, and a how. So who are we is here explained in the four thoughts that turn the mind to the Dharma as a precious human life. We're human beings, but we're precious human beings in that we have a system by which we are investigating, that we are looking, that there is a organization of thought, there is an organization of practice, there is an organization of how to transform ourselves from impure beings to becoming pure beings. And that goal to be a pure being is totally available to us. We can achieve enlightenment in a single lifetime. There have been many beings, not the least of which is Maitreya, or rather Milarepa. You might have heard the story of Milarepa, who was born into a family that lost its fortune to a greedy uncle and aunt, and they were made to be slaves. Their family, Milarepa and his family, were made to be slaves, and they eventually were able to break free of that and go, and Milarepa learned the black arts and became like a sorcerer, someone who was able to change the weather and cause hailstorms and cause winds and so on like that, and cause great harm to the village and to the family that had turned on him. And so he was a murderer in that respect. And after he had accomplished, seeing those deeds of that terror that he was creating and everything, he wanted to redeem himself. He recognized that he did the wrong thing, and he wanted to pull himself out of that. So he sought a teacher who could teach him how to do that, how to make amends for the terrible things that he did, and how to be able to liberate himself from the suffering that he caused himself and the other people of the village and the people of his family and so on. So he was able to do that. And he went on to attain enlightenment, no dispute, no question. It was perfectly clear that he attained enlightenment within his lifetime. So even a murderer, even someone who has done terrible deeds, can have a pathway to be able to liberate themselves from suffering, from confusion, from misunderstanding, and to purify their lives. So he went from an impure state to a pure state. So he is the patron saint, if you will, the patron saint of Tibet, Milarepa is considered to be, the great hero. That if Milarepa can do it, anybody can do it. And he taught on that basis, being able to point out, the different characteristics of what he went through, the different changes and so on. So we can all do that. It's a question of our choice. It's a question of, do we want to do that? And, if we say, well, I can't totally commit to that, I have these obligations and so on, what can I commit to? What obtainable goals can I set for myself? Reach those goals, and then maybe reevaluate, and perhaps maybe you can find that there are some greater goals that you can add to that list, and you can move forward a little bit more and more and more, and so on like that. So it's a process. It's a stages. It's a graduated stages of accomplishments that enable us to be able to recognize our true nature. So we have this precious human life that allows us to be able to recognize that. And we have teachers, we have books, we have scriptures, we have practices, we have a structure enabling us to do that, to go through all these stages. So in the four thoughts that turn the mind to the Dharma, we recite these prayers. The first one says, the freedoms and advantages so extremely difficult to obtain accomplish the purpose of human life. If one does not achieve benefit from this now, how can this opportunity come again? So we have this one life in which that we can do this work. Whether we have another life, we can't be sure. There's too many variables. There's too many things. But we learn the Dharma to understand what those many things might be so that we can work within those many things and be able to keep ourselves on a path of righteousness, a path of purity, a path of virtue and wholesomeness and so on. There's a second prayer here that says, Ho, this kind of leisure and endowment are supremely difficult to obtain. When one obtains a body, which is easily lost, do not waste it meaninglessly, but rather use it to attain ultimate liberation, joyous result. So this ultimate liberation, this joyous result, is what we are looking for, to liberate ourselves from this world of suffering, this realm of suffering. And this world of suffering, this ocean of suffering, as it's referred to many times, is in Sanskrit is the word samsara. So we think of it as this ocean of suffering. And we are in the midst of this ocean, but above this ocean there is a surface that we can break through this surface and go into a pure, clear atmosphere. So as we're able to do that, we're able to go into what we call nirvana and have a temporary transcendence from the causes of the suffering, from the activities of the sufferings and the results of those sufferings that are causing this ocean of suffering, the samsara. So we come to recognize that. So it's a precious human being who is born in a situation where we can recognize this, where we can cultivate this nirvana and so on. So this is the first of the four thoughts that turn the mind to the Dharma. Last time we talked about the 8 leisures and the 10 endowments. So if you care to go back and look at that program that we did, or look at the JEWEL Ornament of Liberation, you can read all about that. The second of the four thoughts is impermanence. So this is the text of the 2 prayers for that. It says, Ka, no matter what has been done, nothing benefits at the time of death. Worldly activities, yes, they are lies. Ka, the 8 worldly dharmas are like a painted rainbow. Think you can put your trust in them? In the certainty of death, and knowing that nothing remains long, quickly accomplish liberation. Impermanence makes departure certain, like the shadow of the setting sun. Abandoning laziness and indifference, blaze like fire in fierce diligence. This life is impermanent, like clouds in the autumn sky. Birth and death migrators are the same as actors in a play or a dance. The life of beings is like lightning in the sky, like water falling from a steep mountain cliff. It departs quickly, quickly, quickly. So the point here is this impermanence. We tend to think that this life is permanent. We know that we have a 50, 60, 70, 80 years, whatever, of a lifetime. But the younger we are, of course, the more remote that seems and the more invincible we seem ourselves, and we won't have to face that time that our body is going to die, our body is going to go away. But more than that, we think about this world, we think about all these possessions, we think about all this nature that is outside of our home and everything. We think of that as all permanent. It's always going to be here. The scientists have told us it's been here for billions of years, and if left undisturbed, it's going to remain here for billions more of years. It may be permanent. It may be everlasting in a way that is hard for us to conceive and so on. So, as human beings, all that we really know is what we experience within ourselves. So, we see things as impermanence. I'm young, I'm vibrant, I'm healthy, but then I get sick, then I get old, my body gets decrepit, my mind doesn't work as well, and so on. And then we meet people in our family, we meet people, friends, we meet people who we've heard about, famous people or whatever, that there's death, that we die, and so on. And we come to recognize that not from a personal point of view so much as that's what happens to everybody else. It doesn't have to happen to me. So we begin to recognize as a precious human being that we have this precious life for this finite time, and that we are preparing ourselves for our death. We're preparing our physical body. We're preparing our intellectual mind. But more than that, we're preparing ourselves to recognize our spiritual body, that body that is indestructible, that spiritual body, that body of the big mind, the heart mind, we say. This is the brain mind, this is the heart mind. So coming to recognize this impermanence of our physical and our intellectual, and developing the realization, the recognition of that which is indestructible, this spiritual body, is part of our work here in the Dharma study. So going back to this prayer, it says, Ka, no matter what has been done, nothing benefits at the time of death. So when we die, they say, the hearse that takes us, from the funeral home to the church or to the synagogue or wherever it is that we're going, or to the grave site or whatever, doesn't have any luggage racks on it. It's just us in a box, and we're being transported from one of these places to our final resting place. So nothing benefits us at the time of death. There's nothing, whether we're rich, whether we're poor, whether we're a man, whether we're a woman, whether we're young, whether we're old, none of that means anything at the time of our death. All that we have is that spirituality. The physical body is virtually gone, but that spirituality, that essence of that energy, still remains. And becoming aware of that is what we're trying to do through the teachings of the Buddha Dharma. So the things that we are thinking about in this lifetime, if we're not thinking about our death, we're thinking about these worldly activities. So if you look on page 16 of the practice prayer book that I think you all have, if you look on page 16, towards the bottom of this page, it says here are the 8 worldly concerns, or the 8 worldly dharmas. So these are the things that people are thinking about all the time. human beings are thinking about all the time. They're thinking about gain and loss. They're thinking about their bank accounts. They're thinking about their possessions. They're thinking about their relationships. They're thinking about their jobs. What can I gain out of this? And what possibility is that I'm going to lose this? How is it going to happen? Am I going to be able to circumvent the situations, the events that are going to take these gains away from me? So we're thinking about that all the time. We're also thinking about pleasure and pain. Pleasure maybe in relationships, love relationships, family relationships, relationships with our possessions, the things that give us pleasure, that we really enjoy. And at the end of the day, we can sit back and we can relax and we can look around and think about all the pleasure that we have, being with our loved ones and so on. But then we might also be thinking about our pain. What if so-and-so goes away from me? What if I lose my lover? What if my parents pass away or my friends pass away? The pain that I experience as a result of losing my pleasure source and so on. Maybe it's my job. Maybe it's my possessions here in the house or something. So we're thinking about pleasure and pain quite often during the course of the day. If, as you're hearing this, maybe for the first time, thinking about this, tomorrow as you go about and you're doing your everyday thing, maybe write these things down and think about how often you're thinking about gain and loss, pleasure and pain. And you'll be surprised at how often these are the thoughts that come up in your mind. But in addition to those thoughts, there's also praise and blame. Praise that you're doing a good thing. Praise that you give yourself, or blame that you heap upon yourself for doing something wrong, making yourself feel guilty, or the praise that you did something well. Or maybe it's something at your job. You have a job and you were able to do something really good that helped other people in their jobs in the same workplace. Maybe you brought in a new account. Maybe you figured out a new system that you can enable with your operating system and the way your company works and so on. And they're giving you great praise. They're saying, wow, this is terrific. You've really helped us and everything. And here you're going to get a better parking place, or you're going to get a raise or something. You're going to get this trophy or something like that for all this great work that you did. But then the next day, or maybe that same day, you find out that some client called and said, oh, we decided to go with another company. And because so-and-so didn't call me back in a timely fashion when I had called him, so I'm leaving the company and I'm taking my big account with me. And now you're being blamed. You're feeling guilty that you lost this big account. So no matter what you did the day before, gaining all this praise, now you're the object of all this blame, that the company is suffering. Or maybe it's your family, maybe it's your family that, that your marriage is very important. When you get married, you're getting married to the whole family, not just one person. And when that marriage breaks up, it breaks up the family in many ways and so on. So you might receive blame from the family that you're causing this breakup in our family is now broken up, is fractured and so on. So there's blame for that. So there's blame in the workplace, there's blame in the family and so on like that. So you can see how many opportunities we have to be thinking about praise and blame together with the other things that we talked about. But then there's also fame and disgrace. So how many of us are in a position where we have great fame? Maybe again, it's in our family, maybe it's again in the workplace, maybe it's in Maybe it's in the news. We have an important job. People write about us. We have our picture in the paper and magazines and so on. We have this great fame. Maybe we're a sports star, or maybe we're a politician, or maybe we're a professional doctor or a lawyer or business person, or a holy person, someone who is, in some church or something like that, and they have great fame. People come to them and support them and give them money and give them accolades and come to their talks and so on like that. And books are written about them and people read the books and all this great fame. But then all of a sudden we find out that there's something that is in their past or something that they did recently that brings disgrace. Something, despite all this praise, despite all this fame that they have, they've been doing terrible things. Maybe it's embezzling money, maybe it's lying, it's cheating, maybe it's murdering somebody, maybe it's sexual misdeeds, all these different things that now is like this disgrace that is just pulling the rug from underneath our feet, and now we're just in a world of pity for ourselves, and other people are pitying us that how could they make these terrible errors when they had such great fame, they were so popular and well loved and so on like that. So how often do we think about, maybe it's not our fame, maybe it's not particularly our disgrace, but it's somebody that we know. Maybe it's that sports star. Maybe it's that business person. Maybe it's that politician or something like that. And we can see, how much we're thinking about those other people and the people that have united around them that may be part of our group, that this politician has done these terrible things. And now we all feel disgraced ourselves because we've been supporting him all this time, or her, so looking at these 8 things, these 8 worldly concerns, and you can see that they're opposites. We live in a dualistic nature. We live in a dualistic world, and we look at things as black and white. It's this or it's that. We look at things in terms of something else. Things do not exist completely on their own. Everything are composites of other things, many, many heaps of things. We are heaps of things. We are aggregates of our energy, of our persona, of our perspectives, of our intelligence, and of our desires, and so on like that. And we need to investigate those, and we will come to those later on in our talks in this Buddhism 101 sessions that we're having. But for right now, we're looking at it in a general sense, and we're coming to recognize that we have this these dualistic tendencies, and they are characterized by these 8 worldly concerns. So this is the root of our impermanence, because all these things you see are temporary. But we hold on to them as if they are permanent. And this becomes a problem for us. We begin to identify with these things, and that's what we're trying to overcome, is identification with these worldly concerns. What we want to recognize is that we are part of something that is so ineffable, so inexpressible, so powerful, that it's beyond our human conception. We may have a yearning. We may have a feeling in our heart. We may have heart thoughts that this love, that this understanding is there, but yet we don't have words for it. We don't have concepts for it. And that's because this is non-conceptual. And this is what we talk about as the essence of this spirituality. There's this connectedness, but we don't know how this connectedness works. There's a what, there's a why, we don't know how it works. We know how we can engage with it. That's what we're learning about. We're learning about how to do this. And from that comes this great understanding, this great love for ourselves, this great peace, this great, what we say, this liberation from our suffering, from our confusion, and so on. So the second prayer of this impermanence that helps us with this is the nature of all phenomena. We call all this world, this samsaric world, this world of phenomena. It's phenomena because we can't really say what it is. It's phenomenal. It just blows our mind. We can't really understand what it is. And there's stories, there's conventions, there's religions, there's philosophy, there's science, which is trying to make sense of it. But it seems that with everything that we find out, everything that we learn, by positing a question and then going and find the solution to the question, we find that for every question, there's a multitude of more questions that come afterwards. So this phenomenal experience keeps getting more vast, keeps expanding, getting more and more. It's not getting more definitive, it's getting bigger and bigger. So we say this nature of all phenomena is impermanence. The one thing we can be sure of is this impermanence. The one thing that's permanent is impermanence, is the way we could say it. It says, death is a certainty to all who are born. That's one thing that we all kind of agree on. We all recognize that death comes, whether it's a human death, or it's an animal death, or it's an insect death, or it's the death of a tree on your property, or it's the flowers that bloom in the summertime, but when the fall comes, they all die. But it starts over again in the spring. We see these cycles of life and so on. But death is a certainty to all who are born, whether it's plant life, whether it's animal life, insect life, human life, whatever. We see this cycle of birth and death. And it says that death can descend any time, like a drop of morning dew on a blade of grass. So it can come, with just a click of a finger, the blink of an eye, that things can change. It can be a tragic death. It can be something that was totally unplanned, or it was an accident. And we just weren't prepared, we weren't focused to be able to avoid the accident. Or maybe it was a slow-moving kind of health problem that we didn't take care of, or we didn't recognize the signs and symptoms, or we knew we were sick, but we didn't seek help, all these things. But it goes from one moment to the next. One moment there's life, there's next moment it's gone. So death can descend any time, like a drop of morning dew on a blade of grass. So if you've ever sat out on the lawn like that in the morning and you see the dew and it just goes away just that quickly. So it says, quick, it is time to make effort for the essence of the Dharma. So the Dharma is the teaching, is the philosophy of understanding what it is to be a human being, what it is to have this life, why we have this life, what are the causes of this life, what are the conditions of this life that together with the causes precipitate in our actions, or the karma in which we engage in, and what the results of that are, and so on. So it says it's time to make effort for the essence of the Dharma. So we're seeking a system, we're seeking a way to be able to understand what it is to have this precious human life. So we can certainly argue with this, or we can debate this, and we should. This is part of a healthy exchange of ideas, of our preconceptions and so on, and to be able to get out our emotions, to understand our emotions and see how the emotions control our behavior, and that lock us into thinking of all this permanence rather than allowing us to learn how to let it all go. So these two things, precious human life and impermanence, are very, very important. Does anybody have any comment or question that you want to ask at this time before I carry on to the next two of the four thoughts? Okay, then. So then the third is the suffering of samsara. So I mentioned this ocean of samsara, this phenomenal world in which we live, where all these things that we see and so on, and we agree, that this is a pencil, and we agree that this is a cell phone, and that this is a robe, and these are beads. We've got, pardon me, we have conventions of these objects with names. We agree on what they look like, what they are, how they function, and so on like that. So we have all this agreement of this phenomenal world, but it's all temporary, It's just the way that it appears and so on. And they don't live forever. They don't stay around forever, no matter what it is. If we take them outside and leave them in the atmosphere, leave them on the ground with the rain and the snow and the wind and the seasons and everything, slowly will decay and just become more dirt, and just go back into its component parts of tissues and molecules and atoms and subatomic atom particles and so on. So all this breaks down and then finally gets released as heat, as energy, as light maybe, so we begin to recognize these things. So the suffering of samsara is our attachment to this phenomenal nature. It's natural that this is happening, but it's our attachment to it that is not natural. That is what causes our suffering, the suffering of samsara, that we suffer this, rather than being able to kind of let go and say, okay, I'm here for these many years, and I'm going to enjoy as much of this as I possibly can. And when I find that I'm not enjoying, because I'm suffering, because I'm holding on, I'm clinging, I have misconceptions, etc., I'm going to find ways to release that so that I can get back to my 8 leisures and 10 endowments, and to enjoy this life as a precious human being. So to understand this, we have 2 prayers. The first one says, consider the suffering of beings in the 6 realms of samsara. Doing so, great fear and dread arise in the heart. So consider the sufferings of beings in the 6 realms of samsara. So we go into another discussion, another time when we talk about the 6 realms of samsara. So I'm going to identify them. I'm going to talk about them briefly, but I'm not going to go into detail. We'll do that another time. But as human beings, we think of things in terms of there's a God, or there's a supreme being, that there is something that is beyond all of this, that is in control of all this nature. And we're trying to beseech, or we're trying to become the embodiment of, or we're trying to become responsive to, good subjects of, to this supreme being, to this notion of gods and so on. So we think of ourselves, we may even think of ourselves as being gods. And that's not necessarily bad. It's not necessarily bad. What's bad about it, or potentially, is the pridefulness that we might develop because we become selfish about that I'm God for myself and not for anybody else. So this is a very broad stroke of talking about this right now. So we'll get more definitive with it later. But just this idea that there is this God realm of being a human being. Human beings who think, who behave like they are these gods, who are above everybody else, that are superior to everybody else, and so on like that. And you may have experienced that yourself, or you may know somebody who has. A second group of beings is what we call the jealous gods. These are beings who have great ability to manipulate the minds of other people. And they are able to seize their respect, their support, and so on, to be able to create wealth, to be able to create power, to be able to create nations, to be able to create businesses, all these different things. There are activities they're very adept at. Problem is that these jealous gods are in conflict between themselves, other jealous gods, and they're in conflict with the gods who have this natural ability, have this natural wisdom, but they don't have this compassion. They don't have this ability to want to help other beings. The jealous gods have the ability to manipulate the minds of people, but they don't necessarily have the wisdom. They don't know what it is that they're doing. They're doing it maybe for very superficial, selfish reasons, for their own aggrandizement, or for that of their community, for their followers, for their people, and so on like that. So again, we may see that there's been times when we behave like jealous gods. Sometimes we see it in other people, that they are behaving like jealous gods. They're in conflict with each other. They want what each other has, and so on. They're trying to get it, and so on. And their life is really built around this constant conflict of having to protect themselves for what they have and trying to get what others have, and they want to bring it in for themselves. So those two of the six. The third one is so we say that that's part of the higher realms, so the God realm, the jealous God realm. Then we go to the lower realm. The lower realm is comprised of the animals, comprised of what we call as anguished spirits, or jealous God, or hungry ghosts, and hell beings. Those are the three: animals, these anguished spirits, these hungry ghosts, and these hell beings. So the animals are very dumb. You know, they do have emotions. We've learned a lot from observing the animals and everything. They're more like humans than we thought they were years and years ago, centuries ago, and so on. But yet they can't change their environment. They don't recognize, the weather and so on like that, so they're unable to do certain things for themselves, although some animals do have a higher degree of intelligence and they can use tools and so on like that. But generally, we are animalistic beings, and we know that when we're acting like an animal, we're acting like someone who's only thinking about their own survival. They're thinking about their own hunger. They're thinking about their own sexual procreation drive. They're thinking about their territory or something, very, very simple like that. And so human beings can be like that, and animals have no chance of getting out of that. So we come from this animal world. The next one is the hungry ghost, or the anguished spirits. These are beings who are very, very selfish, very, very miserly, and they're greedy, and they want as much as they can get for themselves or for their family and so on, and they don't want to share it. So whether it's power, whether it's money, whether it's possessions, whatever it is, they want to hold on to it for themselves. And they're characterized by being very fat and round, and they have very short legs and short feet and short arms and hands and very long necks and very small mouths. And what that symbolizes is their inability to be able to help themselves to feed themselves, to give them, to drink, to give them satisfaction, to give them a satiation of their hunger and their thirst. They always want more. They always want more. And again, we may think of ourselves in that manner. We may know people who are like that, who are completely insatiable beings. And then the third of the lower realms are the hell beings. And these are beings who have committed heinous crimes, terrible crimes, killing their mother, their father, killing a holy person, desecrating holy places, sexually taking advantage of other people, telling lies, hurting people in many ways, profound ways, and so on like that, causing schisms, causing fractures in their philosophic, systems, and so on, causing great harm to people. These are people who are like in hells. They're like being driven by demons, the demons inside causing them to do these things and so on. They're very unwholesome, and they're very consumed by like this fire, of this unwholesome fire. So the stories of hell beings, being boiled in oil and things like that are indicative of the ferocity of their suffering and so on. But there's hot hells and there's cold hells where beings are being crushed by glaciers and left out freezing and so on like that. So it's very symbolic of the way that different human beings live in their native lands and so on. And beings can suffer from that, and their demons are self-perpetuating. We've created these demons for ourselves, and we allow them to continue through our trying to satisfy these demons, to try and act out these demons. So those are the five. The sixth one is the human realm. That all these six are within the human realm. The human realm is the realm of desire. Always wants what the gods have. Always want what the hungry ghosts have. Always want what the animals have. Always want what the jealous gods want. Always suffering from the demons and so on like that. So it shows that this is the condition of being a human being. And so it says, consider the suffering of beings in the six realms of samsara, these six realms that I just spoke about. It says, doing so, great fear and dread arise in the heart. So knowing this, that we can, be, if our life ends, or even now in this life, that we can be dragged into the hell realms, that we can be dragged into the realm of the hungry ghost, the greediness, the animals, etc. That we're going through, although we're a human being, we're behaving like these other facets of what it is to be a human being. So the second prayer of this is, it says, in the three lower realms, the animal, hungry ghost, and the hell beings, in the three lower realms, and even in the three higher ones, the God, the jealous God, and the human realms, there is not an instant of absolute happiness. There's this constant suffering that is going on. But it's not to say that suffering is the only thing that's there, because there can be happiness, there can be pleasure, and so on. And we get seduced by those things, and we push aside, we suppress the causes of our suffering and so on. And those good things can become source for our pridefulness and so on, that then become attachments and bad things for us, negative things for us. So there is not an instant of absolute happiness. I will avoid the root cause of my samsaric existence and practice the excellent path of peace to enlightenment. So knowing all this as a precious human being, we avoid the root cause. Why is it that we are having this samsaric existence? Why is it we live in this world? Why is it we have the 8 worldly concerns? Why is it we want to have the 8 leisures and the 10 endowments? Why is all this? I will avoid the root cause of this samsaric existence and practice and begin to turn around my life. And what we've been practicing maybe is greedy. What we've been practicing is maybe desirous. What we've been practicing is maybe unhealthy, unwholesome deeds and so on. Instead, let me practice good things. Let me do good things for the benefit of myself, my family, my friends, all other beings and so on. For the world, for the planet, so on, to be able to take care of that, to see that we're all part of the same energy and matter. You know, we have a place in all of this, and this is all within ourselves. So to practice the excellent path of peace. So peace, where there is true peace, there is no sorrow. There is just quietude, there is enjoyment, there is happiness. It's just a one-pointed mindfulness of, very simply to say, love. Whatever we conjure love to be, where it's not harmful to any other being, and it's being together with oneself and with one's heart-mind, is the peace. And to realize this, that there is a pathway to this, is the pathway of peace to the enlightenment, to the liberation, the enlightenment that we are precious human beings, and we live in a place where this can be a peaceful place if we can do it, at least for ourselves. We may not be able to do it for others. And because we may have some high degree of peace, doesn't mean that despite that, around us, there is war going on. Despite that, there is thievery going on. Despite that, there is hunger going on and so on, that we do not let our peace be upset by that. We do everything that we can to help those beings who are caught in those sufferings. They have to free themselves from the attachment to those sufferings. We have to do that too. For us to be able to recognize that is the key to what we're doing with the Buddha Dharma, because there is a system for us to be able to recognize the causes and the antidotes to the afflictions that cause us that kind of suffering, so that we can abide in that peace in this lifetime. So with each one of these, and we still have one more to speak about, but as we do this prayer, these 4 prayers, these 4 thoughts to turn the mind to the Dharma, this is how we should start our day, contemplating this, reciting these prayers. And with each prayer, you see at the bottom of each page here, is the word contemplate. So we first have to contemplate. We first have to think about what is the meaning of this, that, I just, as briefly but as concisely, comprehensively as I could, I tried to give an explanation of what each of these is, and then to think about this, to contemplate this, and think about it what did I read about it? What did my teacher say about it? What has my experience been with this? What does this mean to me? And contemplate it. Contemplating it to the point of exhaustion, to the point where we can't think about it anymore. We've gone through all the myriad ways in which we engage with these 4 thoughts that turn the mind to the Dharma, and we just relax. And our mind just goes into a state of quietude, of no thought, and we just relax. And that's the meditation. That's what we're going for. Meditation itself is not a passive thing. Meditation, the process of meditation, is very active. That we're going through all this learning, we're going through all this processing, We're going through all this practice to get to the point of that relaxation. And it just comes by itself. It just unfolds by itself. It's not something that we can say, I'm going to sit down and meditate and have this quietude just like that. It takes quite a bit of practice to do that. It becomes a lifestyle. It becomes who we are as precious human beings. So we see that we have to engage in the process of the learning, of the listening, of the thinking, of the contemplation, and of the relaxation, which then becomes the meditation. Meditation, the word meditation in Tibet is the word Gom, G-O-M, and it means familiarization. So what are we becoming familiar with? Well, we had to become familiar with the process of our dualistic nature and how to let go of that. So we became familiar with that whole process part. But then we become familiar with the relaxation part, how to relax, how to just sit back and just be what seems to be non-active in a physical sense, peace of mind. Our intellect comes into one-pointed mindfulness, and our physical energy and our mental energy all comes together like a key that fits into a lock. And the lock is what's surrounding our heart, our big mind, and opens up our big mind. And we become open. We become open to what all this is, and we begin to see and recognize and process this all as nature, all as who it is to become a natural being, to become a being at peace with oneself and with all of this nature and so on. So, any comments or questions? Okay, so then we come to the fourth of the four thoughts that turn the mind to the Dharma, which is karma, cause, and result. You may all have heard of the word karma, and karma is a word that means action in Sanskrit. Before you can have an action, you need to have a cause. You need to have a thought, something that is telling you or warning you or describing to you some activity that you will engage in. As a result of that comes the effect of that cause and action, and then that can become another cause for something else now. So karma is this relationship of the cause, the action, and the result. So this is in these two prayers. It says, even if one were a king, at the time of death, one's possessions, enjoyments, friends, and retinue will not follow. But wherever that sentient being goes, his karma follows after him like a shadow. So this karma is like a residue of your activities, the result of your activities. So even if one were a king, so king being this great ruler who answers to no one in this world, even at the time of their death, all their possessions and friends and relatives, nothing can help them. You know, nothing will follow them. They go on by themselves. But wherever that sentient being goes, and sentient means someone, a being who is born, has been born, a being who has been sick, or is prone, has sickness in their life, whether it's intellectual or, emotional sickness or it's physical sickness. They have sickness, they have old age, and they have death. So all the animals qualify as sentient beings, all insects and so on qualify as sentient beings. There's beings that we don't see, there's beings that are in the atmosphere that is invisible to us, But in this atmosphere, if we had the right technical equipment, we could see there's all kinds of living things in the midst of this that are sentient things. If we dig down into the earth and we get, we study, the dirt and so on like that, we'll find there's all kinds of things there too that are sentient beings. So, but to be a precious human being has qualities about a precious human being that is extra special of being of ordinary sentient beings. So wherever these sentient being goes, his karma follows after him like a shadow. So what this means is the karma, the results of the actions, follow along. They follow along in a way that is kind of like a reciprocity. A reciprocity is I made a note because I wanted to say this right. Where did I put the note? Is a mutual exchange. A reciprocity is a mutual exchange. So, something goes up, comes down, goes up, comes down. It's reciprocating. It's going back and forth. It's like the golden rule. We've all, learned, if we do good things are going to happen to us. If we do bad things are going to happen to us. If we have bad situations, if we have bad things that we take into a good behavior, we can transform those bad things and have a good result. Likewise, we can take good things as our cause, but we manipulate them in such a way that our action is a bad activity. We can transform that good cause into a bad outcome, to a bad result. So this reciprocity is like this karma, this mutual exchange. So we become attached to that. We become attached to the good stuff. We become attached to the bad stuff. We use it as a rationalization, as a justification for our bad behavior or for our good behavior. It may mean merit to us. Merit, that if I'm doing good deeds, I'm accumulating all this merit. This is another way I'm saying I'm accumulating all this good karma, these good results, and they're going to carry me through. It's like putting good deeds in the bank so that when I am confronted with a bad situation, I can go to this merit bank and pull out these meritorious good behaviors and use them to be able to see me through this difficult period, this difficult time. So if we become so attached to that, that can become prideful. That can become a clinging. That can become surrendering our responsibility to our love, to our understanding that that we need to be free. What we are really trying to do as human beings, as all beings, as sentient beings, all sentient beings want to be free. They want to be free of not having a boss. They want to be free of not having to worry about money. They want to be free of having good health. They want to be free from having to take care of this body. So we want to be free from all these things. But if we're thinking about the merit, if we're thinking about the good things, we're thinking about the bad things, we're encumbering ourselves. These become our hindrances. They're psychological. They might be physical. They might be intellectual. But we start relying on these things. We start justifying our behavior or our lack of behavior because of these things. Fears are our neuroses come out of these things. Our neurotic, I don't climb on ladders. I don't go up on the second story windows. I don't clean those. I don't clean out I'm afraid to go up there. And people will carry that around with them or other superstitions that people believe in and so on. And maybe we've done that, you know. So we need to let those things go. So it's as if we have a bag of karmic results that we're carrying around with us. And we're carrying this bag, and when we come to the time of our death, and we say, oh, we can't take our possessions with us, we can't take our friends with us, we can't take our family with us, but what we can take with us is that karma, that bag of karma. And then we got to deal with it in what we might call the afterlife or whatever, and that's a topic for a few more conversations. But nevertheless, think of it as energy. Think of it that bag is full of this energy, and we have to deal with it. It might be good energy, it might be bad energy, but it's energy that we identify with, our ego identifies with. And our ego is the antithesis of our freedom. We're trying to let go of the ego. We can't destroy the ego. The ego is part of our being a human being. It's like a survival technique that we have that's built in. We can't annihilate it. We got to give it a job. We got to control the ego. And that's part of the Buddha Dharma, is learning how these things happen, how these things develop, what the causes are, and so on, the what, the why, and the how, and then be able to reassess and give things, compartmentalize these things as tools and so on, to do certain jobs at certain times, and to be able to understand the way that you can do this and so on. And in doing that, you become more and more and more of a transcendent person who gets to relax a whole lot more. And relaxing, remember, was the thing that leads us to our meditation. We become in that state of joy, that state of kindness, of loving kindness, that state of compassion, the state of method, of means, skillful means, knowing how to navigate through all this. And this joy, being able to see that all this joy, we all share this joy, and that we're all the same. All these things are the same. We're all made up of the same physical things. You know, those of us that are sentient beings have mental aspects, and we're part of that same thing. And we have this spirituality, this vibration that, as inexpressible as it is, we begin to recognize it in its subtlety. We can't communicate it, what it is, to ourselves and to others, because it's beyond our human capability, but we can recognize it for the peace that it brings, for the bodhicitta, for the love that it brings. So wherever a sentient being goes, the karma follows after him like a shadow, this bag of energy and so on. And we need to know how to deal with that, this karma, cause, and result. What we ultimately need to do is to put that karmic bag down, to cut ourselves off, to let go of that karma, to reduce it to the point that it just like evaporates on its own. And again, that's the work of the Dharma, of Buddha Dharma. The second prayer related to this is the fruit of one's positive karma. I'll say it again. The fruit of one's positive karma is happiness. Suffering is the fruit of negative karma. The inexorable karmic causation, is the mode of abiding in all dharmas. Henceforth, practice the Dharma by distinguishing what should be practiced and what should be given up. So we learn and we practice. We go through a process of elimination. Oh, this works, but that didn't work. I still have suffering here, or I don't have happiness here, or I don't have suffering here. we begin to see all these fine lines between happiness and suffering, and the choices that we've made to bring us to those realizations, those understandings. So it says, the fruit of one's positive karma is happiness. If we're happy, we're at peace, that's a good thing, right? And we're feeling very positive. But if we're agitated, if we have this suffering, and that's because of negativity, things that maybe we're neurotic about, things that we're fearful about, things that I'm worried about, something that I did 25 years ago, and I still feel guilty about it. In the right situation, or the wrong situation, that comes up. But I haven't been able to cut it off. It still comes up. Is that a good thing or a bad thing? Well, it can be both, because that lesson of what that thing that you did 25 years ago can continue to be a practice for you in order that you can help other beings. Because if you experienced it, you're no different than everybody else. They're not different from you. You can help other people from that lesson. If you forget that lesson, you suppress it, good as it might be, that's not really helping anybody. But if you remember those lessons and you're talking with people, you become guides to them. You become helpful to them. And that's one of the works of the Buddha Dharma, is to help other beings to attain their liberation, their peace of mind, and so on. That's one of the works of doing this. This is how we attain that stabilization of that Buddha nature, which is in our heart, in our heart center. So what seems to be a negative reminder or an unsolved problem, a guilt or something like that, doesn't have to be that way. We can turn it around. We can use it as a life lesson for ourselves and for others and so on. And maybe, we're not as pure as we want to be. You say, I want to get rid of that problem I had 25 years ago, and you do everything you can to eradicate that, but it still comes up because we're still impure beings. As long as we're breathing, we're still subject to dualistic nature. So we need to be aware of that too. So all this all fits together in this very dynamic mosaic kind of a matrix in which our lives operate and so on. So again, this is the Buddha Dharma that helps us to structure, to see how all this works so that we can operate within this field of phenomenal nature. So it says this inexorable, this unarguable, inexorable karmic causation. Now, we may not understand it. We don't understand how it works completely, but we see the results of it over and over and over again. We can't always explain it, but we know it's there. This inarguable karmic causation is the mode of abiding in all dharmas. So this dharma here is a lowercase d and means the many different pathways. The word dharma is a Sanskrit word that means a pathway. So there's all these different pathways to do all these different things that we can do as human beings in this world and so on, this samsaric world. But at the same time, there is the Buddha Dharma. The Buddha Dharma is the Buddha pathway, and that's identified by a capital D, which differentiates it to be the Buddha Dharma. And this is a way of a structure, of an understanding, an articulation of becoming pure, of becoming holy, of becoming sacred, of recognizing this within yourself. You already have these seeds within yourself. You already have this energy within yourself, but it's blocked up, it's confused by the emotions, by the wrong views, by the mental misconceptions, by your habitual past tendencies, and so on like that. So the Buddha Dharma helps us to sort all that out. It's a system to help us to do that so that we can get to the point of relaxation, the point of meditation, the point of peace, the point of love. So many people during the time of the Buddha, as he traveled around and met so many people and so on, and many times he was asked the question, what is my next life going to be? Or what was my past life like? You know, how many lives did I have? And the Buddha would say something like, well, that's not the question you should be asking. The question you should be asking is, what are you doing now? Because what you're doing now is fomenting the seeds for what you are going to do tomorrow, what you are going to be in your next life. So what's past is past. We can't change that. The only thing we have control of is now. We can't control tomorrow. Tomorrow is always going to be there. Tomorrow never comes. As soon as we get from where we are now, there's tomorrow. From the time that we came in and sat down and started having this discussion, we were a human being who had this set of thoughts and this set of activities and so on like that. And we kind of set them down for a time. And now for this hour and a half or so, we've been talking. Maybe there was one thing. Maybe there was two or three or four things. Maybe there was a few things that you learned that now you're changed. So in that respect, the old person that came in and sat down is gone. It's like a dream. Where were you 2 hours ago? What were you doing 2 hours ago? It's like a dream. But now you have the benefit of these fresh ideas, of these fresh notions, of these fresh thoughts and so on. And now you're being reborn. It's like you're getting up and you're going out. Now as a different person with a different perspective, an expanded perspective on what it is to be a human being, of what the Dharma is, of what our life is, of what it is that we are trying to accomplish in these discussions in order that we can liberate ourselves, to free ourselves to this freedom of a pure human being. So thank you for listening. It wasn't much of a discussion. It was more of a talk here. But I think it was important to get this out. And does anybody have any thoughts or comments?
Lance, I had a technical question,
Okay.
if I may. When you were going over the four thoughts, the order for the contemplation, so it's precious human life, impermanence, and then is it supposed to be the third one is the karma, cause and effect, and then the fourth one is the defects of samsara, or does it matter the
It
order?
doesn't matter. In some practices, it's taught that karma is number 3 and samsara is number 4.
Okay.
So it goes either way, and you could, discuss it either way. And that's the point. All this is timeless and so on. So, but to adopt a particular order for yourself, I think is good. It helps you to stabilize the four thoughts that turn the mind to the Dharma. So whatever you're comfortable with.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much for that, Pema Dorje. I wanted to, when you were reviewing this, I was thinking about the, in Zen they have the 5 remembrances. I am of nature to grow old. There's no way to escape growing old. I am of the nature to have ill health. There's no way to escape having ill health. I am of nature to die. There's no way to escape death. Everything I love and everything that is important to me is of nature to change. There's no way to escape being separated from them. My actions are my only true belongings. I cannot escape the consequences of my actions. So it's pretty much the same thing. So this, it's nice to see that the same same thought to carry over into the different Buddhist traditions.
Yes, indeed. And that's why I think, our study of the sutras, as much as we've done, shows us that there is that commonality in the sutras that all these other practices subsequent to that come out of.
Mm-hmm. And I was listening to a sutra from the Majjhima Nikaya. I think it was Majjhima Nikaya 39 or 40. I'm not sure which one now. And he was talking about, the Buddha was talking about what happened to different disciples after they died. What realms they were reborn in. And the question was asking him, why was he telling people this? What was the purpose of that? And the Buddha was saying, well, I'm telling this people to encourage them, to show them that, how you live your life is important. And these people who live their lives in certain, I tell these to these monks, I tell them to the nuns, I tell them to the lay people, so that they get a sense of what they can do with their life so that they can have a positive rebirth.
Yeah. It's a story. All this is a man-made story. The reality of it is ineffable. It's inexpressible. We're in the midst of it, and we agree to create these stories for ourselves, these mythologies, whatever tradition we subscribe to. Buddhism, Hinduism, Islam, Christianity, whatever. But we see that all of them, in essence, have a same core. That's what's that we begin to recognize, that we see. All these stories and everything come out of it are just ways in which we communicate to ourselves and to each other through our intellect. Through the heart, it's wordless. There's no language that we are readily familiar with until we get to, and as I've said many times, the language of light. When we begin to recognize that, it really makes, we begin to see things, recognize things in a way that cuts through cultures. So thank you. Thank you, Zara. I hope you didn't drive off.
Thank you. No, I'm here. I'm listening. Thank you for everyone's comments. Thank you, Kaka.
All right, so unless anybody has anything else, we'll wrap this up and I'll recite dedication prayer. So we'll say the Day Korma prayer, the short Day Korma prayer on page 35, which is the short dedication. Day Korma means short dedication. By the virtues collected in the three times, by myself and all beings in samsara and nirvana, and by the innate word of virtue, may I and all sentient beings quickly attain unsurpassed, perfect, complete, precious enlightenment. May the teachings of the great Drikungpa Ratna Shri, who is omniscient, Lord of the Dharma, Master of interdependence, continue and increase through study, practice, contemplation, and meditation until the end of samsara. Om, Ah, Hum. Om, Ah, Hum. Om, Ah, Hum. May my body, speech, and mind become inseparable with the body, speech, and mind of all the enlightened ones for the benefit of all sentient beings. Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you very much.
Have a good
What
night.
time